Hi everyone! So, I have got this quilt completely bound and finished. I will put a card here if you are interested in this scrap quilt. This is part 2. Things I learned that I did not have in the first video. Because this is polyester on the top and you have to cut it, you run the risk of it raveling. So do not cut it if you are not ready to cut it. It will fray and drive you crazy. In the process of me cutting it off the long arm, folding the quilt, bringing it back home, and then binding it, I found that there was extensive raveling. So you will have to take a lighter and burn the edges. Who knew? Yeah, you have to melt the edges after you trim it, and then the raveling will stop. Also, I've had a bunch of YouTubers copy me. I don't know, I put my video out there. It was my idea. A lot of you commented that you had seen this before on Nancy's Notions back in the 80s. I did watch Nancy's Notions back in the 80s, but very limitedly, and I never saw this. So FYI, there is some episode out there that you can go see all of the expert from Nancy Zeman from Nancy's Notions doing this very same thing. And this is called shadow quilting. And let me get behind the camera so that we can talk a little bit more about it. Okay, so there was some things that I did have issues with. I did have a section of quilting I had to rip out because my tension screwed up. I highly recommend, you can see this line going down through it. I highly recommend that you do press your organza before starting. And I did have another problem where I was not gluing these pieces. And let me turn my camera sideways. And I did have shifting to where the batting is showing, and I don't know where those spots are, but they are here. This quilt ended up very, very heavy, but there is a famous Instagram person who mimicked what I was doing. I mean, within like 2 days after I had posted my video. And at first it kind of upset me because I thought, man, she's stealing my idea, and she has a bigger following than I do. So she's going to get more notoriety from it. But actually I got to thinking, that was my first instinct, to be mad. But then I realized that that's the sincerest form of flattery. She's a way more famous quilter than I am. And she copied me. So there you go. But that's why I put this out there. It's for everyone to copy. I want all of you in your homes to try this technique. If I would have stuck with this quilt, because of the cold temperatures in the garage, I just couldn't get in there. That is very hard on my machine. So I recommend that all of you try this. You could make a tote bag out of it, or a small project. Just try a table runner or wall hanging. But I do like how it muted the very dark colors and the neutrals. It just kind of softened all those edges, and I'm really liking this. So this quilt looks very, very artsy fartsy in my opinion. It's got so many angular lines and jagged edges. It really, really screams modern quilt. This was a very easy process, but if you Google shadow quilting, it will come up that this is actually a legitimate thing. I was not the inventor of this. And I'm very, very pleased. I did not go back and do the grid quilting just because I did not press my organza to begin with. That was a mistake of mine, and I was afraid that if I went back, I would get a bunch of puckers, so I didn't want to do that. So those of you who wanted to see this, you're now seeing it. I really wanted to do a quilt reveal on the long arm, but I didn't have time, and I did not have my camera equipment charged and set up. so it didn't happen. Hopefully I'll get out and do a quilt drop sometime in the coming days. I don't even know if that'll happen, but if not, I will insert a picture right here. This quilt was easy. This quilt used 6 bags of my gallon bags of my scraps, and let it be known, I'm going to be very transparent here. There was a bag of scraps I bought from Goodwill. I don't remember if I showed that in the previous video. I went ahead and just threw all those away. They were strings. I'm not making any more string quilts. They're too time consuming. I just threw them away. There was some Kafe strips, 2.5-inch leftover jelly roll strips that were the rusty browns. I threw those away too. Shh. I know you all are probably having a coronary right now. Please forgive me. I am being transparent, but if I continue to keep all my scraps, I'm not going to have any room for the fabrics that make quilts that you like to see. And by the way, have you seen my latest concoction pattern free thing? Yep, Kafe. I have a Kafe facet video that I posted this week. I will insert a card here so that you can go view that. It is a free pattern and it is fast and easy. So, I'm not sure what else to talk about on this. I don't know. This is very slick. It's very hard to fold. It's so slick, it just is very slippery when you go to fold it up. It's hard to fold. I'm liking how I did this. The reason why this is called a shadow quilt, it's much like a shadow box. For those of you who don't know what a shadow box is, in framing, which I used to do framing for a living, it is a great big thick frame with a deep pocket to where you can put all of your mementos in that are 3D, and you encapsulate it behind the glass and it's kept forever. Okay, whatever I know there's a lot of flags that are put in a shadow frame that's kind of in the shape of a triangle. I know that exists. And then there's lots of people that do mementos and what have you. Well, this is a great blooper reel. This is a great memento for me because there are so many fabrics that I have used through the years in this quilt. Some of these are even my grandmother's fabric, so I will cherish this for a very long time. And it did bring back a bunch of memories as I was sewing and quilting this. For those of you who are not going to go back and watch the video, let me turn the camera around. So all this is just your random scraps of fabric. This was like a strip that was cut off from the edge of a quilt, and I just laid it on top of my quilt sandwich. All of these pieces are just unordinary size pieces, and then you just put the organza over it. And you may have to glue these to the batting with Elmer's glue or some kind of stick glue. You encapsulate it like a shadow box with the organza, and then you quilt it. And it's gonna preserve your scraps, and it's gonna be able to let you use up all of your strange shaped scraps. And I'm looking through this quilt and I'm trying to find a very odd shaped one. There's one. That's an odd shape. All of these are odd shaped. The lighting is really showing the quilting on this, which I didn't realize it was gonna do. You can get rid of lots of little teeny tiny pieces as well. There's lots of small pieces in here. This is my starting side where I started on this, and then I got tired of cutting things down, so I used my bigger pieces on the very end. So this was the last part of the quilt I quilted. And let it be known that this was like a binded edge on some placemats that I made that got trimmed off, and I was able to just use that. I kept it and I'm glad I got to use it. You could also do this with orphan blocks. If you've got a bunch of orphan blocks that don't go together or are not the same size, you could very well put them in here. And I do have orphan blocks in here, but at this time I cannot see them. I do not see them. I thought they would just stand out, and they don't. Well, let me step back a little so you get the whole picture. But this has a very modern look, and the stripes in the fabrics really pop and show up, and that makes this so much fun. You kind of lose the the calicos are kind of just totally lost. I see plaid, but you can barely tell it's plaid. The solids soften. There's some kaif. Okay, it's really softened the kaif. There's some ice cream bombs. There's just all kinds of fabric in this, and if you have any questions, I said I was going to answer questions, but I wanted to point out that yes, this had been done before for years, and this is nothing new, and that people did copy me, and I really truly do find that the sincerest form of flattery. But I do encourage all of you to whip out your scraps, because this is a quick make. This would, if I wanted to, I could cut this up, and this would make a beautiful coat. With it having the polyester on the outside, it would be like a slicker coat, to where when you slide into your car seat, your coat's not gonna stick to your seat. This would actually be a really good idea for a coat. I don't know, what do you think? It's very different, but it's finished, and I'm very pleased. Let me talk the binding. So here is the backing, and I did not measure this quilt. It did not end up being 108 by 108. My batting was only 90 inches, so I stopped at 90. I know it's 90 long, and I'm not sure. I think I came in about 8 inches on each side, maybe 10 after I trimmed this up and squared it up. Oh, yes, that's another thing. Let's talk about squaring this up. Okay, so this is a laser level, and I took the batteries out when I'm not using it. So when you push this button, a line comes out this way and a line comes out this way. I knew that the quilt was true from the top edge down to the bottom edge, so I knew those were parallel. So all I had to do was lay this on one end, turn it on, it would shoot a line across the top and the side, and then I took my scissors and cut along that line. That is how I squared it up. Is it perfect? It's pretty darn close. So this was like a tchotchke thing you can buy on Amazon, and I think that it was less than $10. I've used this on a couple quilts. It has suction cups, to where I suppose you could tack this somehow on your design wall and then affix it to the design wall. I don't know. I have never tried that. It also has holes to where you could tack this down with a nail to hold it still on the wall. So you could go ahead and draw your line, or use your ruler and draw a line. I tried to use a friction pin on the polyester, and I could not get my pin to work, but I'm not sure if my pin's dying or not, so there's that. Let's talk about the binding. Okay, so I originally stitched this to the back first, and then I was afraid on the edges that because I didn't densely quilt this, that this would unravel. Even though I burned the edges, I was afraid it was going to unravel. So I did a really tight applique stitch on the front, on my binding, so that it would encapsulate that, seal it off to where it would not come undone. And it's very firmly affixed on the front and the back. And I used a 2.5-inch strip. Is it perfect? Why, heavens no. But I did use, so this is another thing, my binding, if you'll notice, we've got different binding here to here. And then if I come over here, there's some pink. And if we look up at the top, there's some tan. And then we go back to pink and some white. So in my bag of scraps, I ended up with 1-gallon bag full of leftover binding strips that were already folded in half and cut. And so I just pieced those together and continued on with the scrappy theme. So that was an idea. I don't know. I've done that with several quilts where I make scrappy bindings and I really like it. And I am that is not my idea. I am mimicking, so Elizabeth Hartman, she has people who sew her quilts for her that hang in quilt shops. And when she does the actual finishing of the quilt, I'm not sure if it's her quilt that she makes, she will put like a 6-inch scrap of a different color to where you know, or where she knows, or where everybody knows, that that quilt is actually one that she made, which is adorable. That is a wonderful idea. And so I'm going to flatter her and use her idea. So just a few ideas throwing out there, and I will try and get a good picture of this in the sunshine because my house lights are creating magnificent shadows, and you can see the quilting really good, but I really want you to see the color, the softness of this quilt. Thanks for watching.